We're talking about Michigan. We're talking about Alabama. We mentioned Nick Saban. It's obvious coaches are a big deal. Do coaches, though, make the impact as much? I think they make an impact during the week. So you've got 3 weeks to prepare.
Yeah.
Nick Saban is as good as it gets. When that ball is kicked off, and don't get me wrong, I think coaches are vital in every sport, but I think in football, because they are calling every play, not that Nick Saban is, his offensive coordinator, they are more involved than any other sport, I think. Baseball, you get guys sometimes calling pitches. Not really, but you're still getting bullpen. I would say I would rank them football, baseball,
hockey, basketball.
Yeah, I think basketball, especially with the NBA, is a lot of freelancing.
It is.
I think sideline out of bounds,
I've never seen John
baseline out of
Calipari coach a game. I've seen him manage.
Yeah, right. He recruits a lot. But
there you go.
So you got Bob, you got baseline out of bounds, you got sideline out of bounds. Yeah. Okay. So with football, they're calling a lot, but in the end, it comes down to players.
Yeah.
Michigan, do they have the players to handle Alabama? Yes or no?
Yes.
Why?
These players, one, Alabama's not the same Alabama, but let me start with Michigan because you didn't ask me about Alabama. Michigan has the players because Roman Wilson, we saw what he can do when he's given a chance.
Mm-hmm.
J.J. McCarthy, when they truly allowed J.J. to be J.J., we didn't fall in love with J.J. McCarthy because he was throwing the ball down the field 90 yards or he was throwing for 300-400 yards a game, although we saw him do it when it was necessary, i.e. Ohio State, i.e. TCU almost. We fell in love with him because of his legs.
Yeah.
We fell in love because on that play in the Ohio State game, we're like, he's faster than Blake Corum.
Right.
The Purdue, the Big Ten.
Because he rolls the pocket, too.
He rolls the pocket, too. So we've seen what he can do on the run. Yes, they haven't really gone to the pass. But remember the couple plays that he's made this year where you're like, I didn't know he had an arm like that.
Yeah.
Like, you talking about pay attention and watch film? Yeah. The hardest route to throw in the NFL or in football is the out route. It is the 15-yard out route.
Right. From the opposite hash.
From the opposite hash.
Right.
I've seen him do that 4 times this year.
Yeah.
I've seen him roll this way, although I don't recommend it. I've seen him roll out this way and throw strikes back to that hash.
Right.
So I've seen him do enough to where I believe in his moxie enough to do that. The running backs, Blake and Donovan, we've seen what Donovan can do when he was healthy. Spoiler alert, Donovan wasn't healthy all year.
Right.
Now he is.
Neither was McCarthy.
And neither is McCarthy, 100%. So this rest, it helps a lot of people. So I think they have the players. I don't even have to go on the other side of the ball. Because the other side of the ball is
speaks for itself.
Why they've been so dominant over the last 3
I would say this. I think there's a lot of Michigan fans out there who are trying to convince themselves that their team is better than Alabama. I don't know if they truly feel it yet. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but I think there is doubt. The conviction is not there when I talk to them. Like, do you think Michigan's going to win? Yeah, I think they're going to win. I want to hear absolutely. Like before, not that it's the same team, but before they go into the Big Ten title game against Iowa, no question. Yeah. Now, Iowa's not Alabama. But I want that type of conviction. I just don't hear it right now.
Matt, I agree with you, but I know this Michigan team is going to beat Alabama. I know they can beat Alabama. Now let's start with Alabama. Alabama's not the same team. Right. See, Michigan fans right now, they're nervous because of the name Alabama, the name Nick Saban.
Right.
They're worried about 10-1. Mm-hmm. They've watched Alabama destroy teams. They've watched the Derrick Henrys, the Julio Jones, the Calvin Ridleys. They couldn't tell you 4 players off this Alabama team.
Right.
They're worried about the pass, just like in 2021 when everyone knew Michigan was the best team in that game versus Ohio State. They still couldn't tell you Michigan was going to beat Ohio State. They were like, I think we're going to beat them. Mm-hmm. That's why there was so much elation in 2021 when the snow was falling and you win. Because I knew they could win, but you got to do what? You got to prove it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is for this Michigan fan base, which it's fair. You've seen 2 years in a row where you're like, your team went, they let you down. 1 year they get the ass whooped. So I think for Michigan fans, they truly believe, they're going to beat Jalen Milroe, who, by the way, is the second most sacked quarterback in the college football landscape. They can beat them. They just got to prove it.
Yeah, I think a lot of those sacks are early on. I think the last 5 games they've only allowed 8 sacks, and 4 of those, half of those came against Georgia, who's really good. That's not to take anything away from what took place earlier in the season because it's a full season. All right, the stats are what they say. I would just say when I hear people say it's not the same old Alabama, okay, well then if it's not, then why are you so damn worried about Nick Saban?
Yeah.
Why are you so damn worried about a mobile quarterback? And this kid can run. This kid can run, and we all know that, right? Like, we think McCarthy's fast. This dude would beat him backpedaling, perhaps. That's how quick Milroe is.
There's differences in speed.
Yeah, difference in speed.
There's Big Ten speed.
And there's SEC speed.
There's Alabama, Georgia speed.
You can tell that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
So that has been the biggest knock on the Big Ten. So there's two things I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
One, how important is this not just for Michigan, but for the Big Ten? But second of all, the SEC speed. Where do we notice it most?
Skill positions.
Really?
Skill position, but also, which is going to be your favorite, that defensive line.
I was going to say that's the edge rushers primarily and inside.
That the defensive line. When you're watching 2 years, you're watching Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
When you're watching the Kobe Dean. When you're watching Jordan Davis, who's 330 and has a voice like an angel, who the hell knew that?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're watching these guys, and you're like, how can he get to the quarterback in that many steps? He's 335. How can this guy come off the end? Trayvon Walker, first pick over Aiden. So you watch. That's where the speed really shows up, which means you got to have what? You got to have offensive linemen that can handle that speed. And there will in lie always the issue with the Big Ten and the SEC, as we said, defensive line versus that offensive line. The SEC's defensive line is just ridiculous until you see it beat. Like the 1 year that Ohio State beat Alabama, you see it. But going back to
would you also notice it in the defensive backfield? I mean, when guys are breaking on balls primarily. I'm not saying breaking balls. I say breaking on passes. You know.
Now you're breaking balls. No, you used to.
Okay.
I don't think you see it as much anymore because I think a lot of times it's gotten to the place where guys aren't coached up as well. So I think defensive backs, like now, they're not playing technique. A lot of times they're using speed, athletic ability, regardless of what secondary coach is saying in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, wherever else, Clemson. They're just trying to get interceptions because they're trying to get drafted. They're trying to be on social media. They're trying to do it for the gram. Whereas back in the day, guys paid attention. Guys were watching those. So now you use Terrell Buckley out of Florida State. When you use his cerebralness with his 4.3, now you got to pick six before the quarterback even threw the ball. But I think that SEC, that Big Ten, this is major. This is the question you asked me. This is major for Michigan and it's major for the Big Ten because if the SEC feels like this, I guarantee you, shout out to Paul Feinbaum, it's not. If Alabama wins this year, you know what they're going to say, and they will be rightfully so. We beat you with our worst SEC national champion out of all of them. If that's exactly what they're going to say.
Yeah, this Alabama team couldn't beat the previous two. Georgia couldn't beat Joe Burrow, led LSU. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Technically, they couldn't beat Georgia this year. People don't forget the two best offensive weapons for Georgia were hurt in the first quarter. And that's Brock Bowers, who's arguably the best player in the country. Yeah. And then the wide receiver, McConkey, or however you say his name. McConkey. So they're going to be like, you guys couldn't even beat this Alabama team. And I think it's going to be right because they're going to be right, and it will hurt.
I think what I like most about this Michigan team, and when Sean and I filled in for you and Ryan yesterday, this is something we talked about. I used to look at, and I still do, I look at the opposing team, and I think, how many of those guys would I want? Yeah. And when you're coaching against my team, how many of my guys do you want? Yeah. So I look at Michigan, if I'm Alabama, how many of those guys on the defensive side of the ball would I want? There's a lot of them. Yeah. And it didn't used to be that way. You trying to tell me if you're Nick Saban, you wouldn't want a Roman Wilson, you wouldn't want a Blake Corum, you wouldn't want a J.J. McCarthy, and you wouldn't want at least three offensive linemen, at least three.
Edwards?
Yeah.
He's a Georgia back. Like Donovan Edwards, because they literally.
When healthy, he's as good as there is.
Yeah, when healthy, he's DeAndre Swift. That's what DeAndre Swift did when he was at Georgia. He was the third back. He rotated with who just hurt, Cleveland got hurt this year. But anyway, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, Nick Chubb. Yeah.
He rotated with Nick Chubb. But you're right. You look at the players. I want that guy. I want that guy. I want the guy. It hasn't been that way for Michigan. It hasn't been that way since Jim Harbaugh. It's like, that guy's cool. I might take him. Now you're looking at guys and you're like, I can do something with these four guys, Pauls. I can do something with these other side guys as well. So
yeah, those two tight ends for Michigan.
Oh man.
See, I mean, I love the tight end position. I've gone on ad nauseum about this. I think it's a lot more valuable than people give it credit for.
Agreed.
Because I think it's
look at Kansas City.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at Baltimore. I mean, Mark Andrews. I think those provide immediate mismatches if you've got a really good one. And I think Loveland is as good. I'm not saying he's better than Bowers, but I think he's on that track.
Is Michigan one of those schools that I know they use Iowa, but Iowa is more so it's like right now. You got Kittle, you got North Fant, you have T.J. Hawkinson. I think we got a pretty good guy from Iowa too, Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
I think if you look back the trajectory of Michigan history, like they've always had a great tight end. You go back to Jim Mandich. You go back to Jim Mandich.
Yeah, that's going way back. I would say
too.
the wide receivers at Michigan. I'm not saying that because you're here. I've said this for a long time. There are certain schools, folks. Way back in the day, Miami was known for their quarterbacks.
True.
All right, Jim Kelly, Bernie Kosar, Gino Torretta, Steve Walsh, guys like that. Penn State was known for their linebackers. Right, right. Yeah, like the running backs too. Like way back in the day, Lydell Mitchell, who played for the Baltimore Colts. Now I'm dating myself, but I mean that goes way back, right?
Curtis Enos.
Curtis Enos, sure, right.
LeVar Arrington, to your point.
LeVar Arrington, Jack Lambert, way before that. Yeah. All these guys, right? I think Michigan is probably better known historically now for their wide receivers than anything else.
You are. I mean, you're talking about You're talking about Ermanni. Shout out to Ermanni Toomer. You're talking about Ty Streets, Dave Terrell, Desmond Howard,
Anthony Carter.
I was just about to say the OG, the originator. Yeah. Anthony Carter, Jason Avant, Steve Breston.
Yeah. You can go on and on and on. Yeah. Throw yourself in there. Obviously, Donovan Peoples-Jones was really good. That's kind of how I viewed Michigan. And, of course, the left tackle position has always been something pretty special.
77.
Right.
Obviously, 100%.
Right. Which is Trevor Keegan this year.
100%. Right. So. It's been some great ones to do that. I don't want to forget your question. Your question about the tight ends, I think this is why they're so valuable, because now you talked about the defensive line, talk about how fast they are getting up the field. They get up the field so fast, you got to have that safety net. And the safety net is usually the tight end, and the tight ends are now athletic. You're not getting tight ends that are putting their hand in the ground, and just like Steve Hyden, who I played with, who's the tight ends coach for the Lions now. You're getting guys that we can block a little bit. Oh, but we run 4-4. We run 5-5. We play basketball. We know a safety. You better put a corner on me. A linebacker, don't do that. So that's why you're seeing a lot of success at that position. Quarterbacks, you can get a tight end that's 4 yards, 5 yards down the field, or you can still get those seam matchups where they quick pass can turn into how many touchdowns have we seen Sam Laporta catch off that seam play or the rollout flat. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of success at tight end position. They're getting more athletic, and they're not asking them to block as much. Back in the day, you had to do both.
I love it. I love how football has evolved. Yeah. In the back in the day, it used to be running back screens. Suddenly, they implemented slip screens and jailbreak screens and things like that for wide receivers. Now you're seeing more tight end screens to help their offense too, to get a quarterback in rhythm. Oklahoma tried to do it a little bit last night, and to try and get ahead of the chains and stay on schedule.
Because they're bigger. They're bigger guys. Yeah. Tight ends are bigger guys. They can lean, they can fall. Like when a receiver, first of all, they're not big receivers anymore. There's like the average height now is about 6 foot. You know what I'm saying? Maybe about 5'11". Like tight ends, average height is still 6'4", but now they're faster. So when they fall forward, you fall a lot farther when you do those tight end screens.